The alarm bells rang through the giant space station called Nexus Prime. Red lights flashed in every hallway and room. Ambassador Zethkar ran through the corridors as fast as his 4 arms could carry him. His blue skin was covered in sweat, and his big yellow eyes were wide with fear. The emergency meeting room was packed with aliens from all across the galaxy. There were tall ones, short ones, ones with tentacles, and ones that looked like giant insects. They all spoke different languages, but the computers translated everything so they could understand each other. Zethkar stood at the front of the room and raised all 4 of his arms. The room went quiet. He took a deep breath and spoke in a shaky voice. "Friends, we have a big problem. The Devourer fleet is awake again." The room exploded with noise. Aliens started screaming, crying, and making all kinds of scared sounds. Some of them fell out of their chairs. Others started running around in circles. "How many ships?" asked Admiral Crexton, a giant bug-like creature with sharp teeth and long antennas. "More than we can count," Zethkar replied. "They are heading for the Kepler system. 17 planets live there. Billions of people will die if we don't stop them. How much time do we have?" This came from Commander Veltar, who looked like a blue dolphin, but could walk on 2 legs. 2 days. Maybe less. The room got quiet again, but it was a scared quiet. Everyone knew about the Devourer fleet. They were giant robot ships that ate entire planets. They had been sleeping for thousands of years in deep space. Now they were awake and hungry. "The last time they attacked, we sent 12 different fleets to fight them," said Dr. Tessara, a purple creature with 8 tentacles. "Our weapons couldn't even scratch their ships. They destroyed everything we threw at them." "That was 500 years ago," said another alien. "Maybe our weapons are better now." "No." Zethkar shook his head sadly. "Our best scientists have studied the old battles. The Devourer ships are still stronger than anything we have. Their shields can stop the power of a whole star. Their weapons can blow up moons." In the back corner of the room, a human sat quietly, drinking coffee. His name was Jake Morrison, and he was the captain of a human ship called the Endeavor. He had brown hair, blue eyes, and a face that looked like he had seen many battles. He was wearing a simple blue uniform with some patches. On it, the humans had only joined the Galactic Council 5 years ago. Most of the other aliens thought they were primitive and weak. Humans came from a planet called Earth, which other species called a death world, because it was so dangerous. "What about the quantum network?" asked Admiral Crexton. "If we could break their communication system, maybe we could confuse them." "Impossible," said Dr. Tessara. "The network uses quantum entanglement. It's like their ships are all connected by invisible strings that can't be cut. Our best computer experts have tried for hundreds of years to hack it. And even if we could break it," added Commander Veltar, "each ship is strong enough to destroy a planet by itself. We would need to stop all of them at once." Jake finished his coffee and stood up. His boots made clicking sounds on the metal floor. All the aliens turned to look at him. Most of them had never seen a human up close before. "Excuse me," Jake said, in a calm voice. "Could I take a look at those battle plans and ship designs?" The aliens stared at him. Some of them started laughing, but it wasn't happy laughter. "Human," said Admiral Crexton, "this is not a problem that can be solved with primitive thinking. We need advanced science and technology." "Yeah, I get that," Jake nodded. "But sometimes a fresh pair of eyes can see things that others miss. I've been fighting in space for 20 years. Maybe I can help." Dr. Tessara's tentacles wiggled, which meant she was thinking hard. "Very well, human Jake, but do not waste our time. We have less than 2 days to save billions of lives." Jake walked to the front of the room where a big holographic display showed the Devourer fleet. The ships were huge, each one bigger than a city. They were black and covered in spikes, and they moved through space like hungry sharks. These are their motherships, Zethkar explained, pointing at the biggest ships. They control all the smaller ships. And these things at the back are their power sources. They collect energy from dark matter. Dark matter collectors, Jake repeated, studying the display. And they're at the back of each ship? Yes, but they are heavily protected. The shields around them are stronger than anything in the galaxy. No weapon can get through. Jake nodded slowly. He walked around the display, looking at it from different angles. The aliens watched him with growing impatience. And these ships, Jake said, pointing at the smaller vessels, they move in formation? Yes, said Admiral Crexton. They stay in perfect formation because of the quantum network. If one ship moves, all the others know instantly. Interesting, Jake said. He took another sip of his coffee and smiled. It wasn't a worried smile. It was the kind of smile that made the aliens feel nervous. Human, said Commander Valtar, do you have an idea? Jake looked at all the worried faces around him. These aliens were smart, much smarter than humans in many ways. They had technology that seemed like magic. But they were also scared, and scared people sometimes miss simple solutions. Maybe, Jake said, but first I need to know something. How fast? Can these ships move? Very fast, said Dr. Tessara. They can travel at 90% of light speed. And their weapons track targets how? They use advanced sensors that can detect anything moving faster than light itself. Jake's smile got bigger. That's what I thought. Give me 6 hours, and access to your technical files. I think I might have an idea. The aliens looked at each other nervously. They didn't understand why this human was smiling when everyone else was scared. But they were running out of time and options. Very well, said Zethkar. But human Jake, if you are wasting our time while billions of people die, the Council will not forgive you. Don't worry, Jake said, finishing his coffee. I'm not planning to waste anybody's time. I'm planning to save the galaxy. He walked toward the door and stopped and turned back. Oh, and I'm going to need someone to hold my beer. 6 hours later, Jake Morrison stood in the tactical planning room with 20 of the galaxy's smartest military minds. The room was filled with floating screens showing the Devourer fleet getting closer to the Kepler system. Every few minutes, someone would update the countdown timer. 1 day and 18 hours left. Jake had spent the last 6 hours reading everything the aliens had about the Devourer ships. He learned about their weapons, their shields, their movement patterns, and their weaknesses. Well, the aliens said they had no weaknesses, but Jake wasn't so sure about that. Show me the power collectors again, Jake said, pointing at the holographic display. Dr. Tessara waved one of her tentacles, and the image zoomed in on the back of a mothership. These are the dark matter collectors. They gather energy from space itself and send it to the main engines and weapons. And they're not covered by the main shields? They have their own shields, said Admiral Crexton. Weaker than the main shields, but still strong enough to stop any weapon we have. But not strong enough to stop something moving really fast, Jake said. The aliens looked at each other. Commander Veltar's blue skin turned a darker shade of blue, which meant he was confused. Human Jake, he said. Nothing can move fast enough to break through those shields. We have tried everything. Missiles, energy beams, even ramming ships into them. Nothing works. That's because you're thinking like civilized people, Jake said. You're trying to use fancy technology to solve the problem. Sometimes the best solution is the simplest one. What do you mean? Asked Dr. Tessara. Jake walked over to a computer terminal and started typing. The screen showed a small human escape pod the kind used to get off ships during emergencies. I'm going to fly one of these straight at their biggest ship and blow up their power core from the inside." The room went completely silent. It was so quiet that Jake could hear the humming of the computers and the breathing of the aliens who actually breathed. Finally, Admiral Crexton made a sound like a car engine trying to start. "That is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard in my 300 years of life." "Why?" Jake asked. "It's simple. I fly fast. I punch through their shields. I plant some explosives, and boom, problem solved." "Human," said Dr. Tessara, all 8 of her tentacles wiggling at once. "You would be flying directly into the most dangerous defense system in the galaxy. Their automated guns can track and destroy anything moving at any speed. And even if you somehow got through," added Commander Veltar, "the speed you would need to break their shields would turn your body into liquid." "Plus," said Admiral Crexton, "escape pods have no shields, no weapons, and no advanced navigation systems. You would be completely defenseless." Jake nodded. "Yep, that's the plan." "That's not a plan," said Dr. Tessara. "That's suicide." "Maybe," Jake said with a shrug. "But it's also the only chance we have. Think about it. Their defense systems are designed to stop ships, missiles, and energy weapons. They're not designed to stop a crazy human in a tiny pod moving at impossible speeds. The G-forces alone would kill you," insisted Commander Veltar. "Humans are tougher than you think," Jake replied. "We evolved on a death world, remember? High gravity, dangerous weather, predators everywhere. Our bodies are built to handle stress. Not that much." "Stress," said Admiral Crexton. "Well, there's only one way to find out," Jake said cheerfully. Dr. Tessara's tentacles stopped wiggling. "Even if you survived the approach, how would you navigate? Their ships use jamming technology that would disable any electronic guidance." "System. I'll do it manually," Jake said. "Visual navigation, just like the old days." "Visual navigation?" Admiral Crexton's antennas twitched. "At those speeds? Through defensive fire that could destroy battleships? That's impossible. I once flew a fighter jet through a canyon at night during a thunderstorm while being shot at by ground missiles," Jake said. "This is basically the same thing, just in space." "That's completely different," protested Commander Veltar. "Not really," Jake said. "It's all about hand-eye coordination and not panicking when things get scary." The aliens started talking to each other in their own languages. Jake couldn't understand what they were saying, but he could tell they thought he was crazy. He'd gotten that reaction before. "Human Jake," said Dr. Tessara after the aliens finished their discussion, "let us assume for a moment that you could somehow survive the approach and reach the mothership. How would you get inside?" "Plasma cutter," Jake said, holding up a small tool that looked like a glowing pen. "I'll cut through the hull manually, while moving at tremendous speed. I've done precision welding on moving spacecraft before. This is just the opposite." "And the explosives?" asked Admiral Crexton. "I'll pack the pod with high-yield charges. When I reach the power core, I'll set them off." "That would definitely kill you," said Commander Veltar. "Maybe," Jake said. "But it would also create a cascade failure in their quantum network. When one mothership explodes, it would send feedback through the system and overload all the other ships." The aliens looked at the tactical display again. The Devourer fleet was getting closer every minute. "This plan has approximately a 0% chance of success," said Dr. Tessara. "I'd say it's at least 5%, Jake replied. "Maybe 10% if I'm having a good day." "Those are terrible odds," said Admiral Crexton. "They're better than the odds of stopping them with conventional weapons," Jake pointed out. "What were those odds again?" "Oh, right, 0. The aliens couldn't argue with that. They had already admitted that their weapons were useless against the Devourer ships. "There is another problem," said Commander Veltar. "Even if this insane plan worked, how would you escape?" Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. "I wasn't really planning on escaping." "You're talking about a suicide mission," said Dr. Tizara. "I'm talking about saving billions of lives," Jake corrected. "Sometimes that's worth dying for." The aliens looked at each other again. They were used to thinking about war in terms of acceptable losses and strategic advantages. The idea of one person sacrificing themselves to save everyone else was foreign to them. "Why would you do this?" asked Admiral Crexton. "You barely know us. Humans have only been part of the Council for 5 years." "Because it's the right thing to do," Jake said simply. "And because I'm pretty sure I can pull it off." "Your confidence is either admirable or insane," said Dr. Kisara. "Probably both," Jake admitted. "So, are you going to help me? Or should I just steal an escape pod and do this myself?" The aliens were quiet for a long time. Finally, Commander Veltar spoke up. "What do you need from us?" "Access to your explosives, some modification equipment, and about 6 hours to prepare the pod," Jake said. "Oh, and someone to hold my beer while I'm gone." "Hold your beer?" asked Dr. Tissara. "It's a human expression," Jake explained. "It means watch this amazing thing I'm about to do." "And you're certain this will work?" asked Admiral Crexton. "Absolutely not," Jake said with a grin. "But it's going to be one hell of a ride." The aliens looked at the countdown timer. 1 day and 17 hours left. They looked at their own battle plans, all of which had failure rates of 100%. Then they looked at the crazy human who was volunteering to fly into certain death with a smile on his face. "Very well," said Dr. Tissara. "We will help you prepare. But human Jake, if you survive this, we will never understand your species." "That's okay," Jake said. "Most of the time, we don't understand ourselves either." The docking bay of the human ship Endeavor looked like a tornado had hit it. Tools were scattered everywhere. Pieces of metal floated in the zero gravity, and 3 humans were working with a kind of focused intensity that made the watching. Aliens very nervous. Jake Morrison stood next to a disassembled escape pod, holding a plasma cutter and wearing a big grin. Next to him, Chief Engineer Lisa Chun was elbow-deep in the pod's electronics, muttering things that made no sense to anyone who wasn't a human engineer. On the other side of the bay, Sergeant Pete Williams was carefully packing explosives into metal containers. "This is insane," said Dr. Tissara for the 15th time in 2 hours. She had been watching the humans work, and everything they did seemed to violate basic safety rules. "Yeah, it's pretty crazy," agreed Lisa without looking up from her work. "But crazy is what we do best." "You are removing all the safety systems," Dr. Tissara pointed out. "Life support, navigation computers, emergency communications, structural, reinforcement, everything that keeps the pilot alive." "That's the point," said Pete, sealing another container of explosives. "We need room for the big boom stuff." Dr. Tissara's tentacles wiggled in distress. "Big boom stuff? Explosives?" Jake translated. "Really, really powerful explosives." "How powerful?" asked Admiral Crexton, who had come down to the docking bay to see what the humans were doing. "Powerful enough to crack a moon," Pete said cheerfully. "We're packing about 50 times more explosive power than this little pod was designed to carry." "That should be impossible," said the Admiral. "The pod's structure cannot handle that much weight." "We've reinforced it with titanium struts," Lisa said, finally pulling her head out of the electronics. "And we've rerouted the power systems to handle the extra load." "Titanium struts?" Dr. Tissara looked at the metal bars that the humans had welded to the pod's frame. "Those are not titanium. They appear to be made from scrap metal." "Yeah, we ran out of titanium," Jake said. So we're using parts from the old vending machine in the cafeteria. A vending machine, repeated Admiral Crexton slowly. It was really well built, Pete said defensively. Those things are designed to survive being kicked by angry humans. They're practically indestructible. Dr. Tessara moved closer to examine the pod. What she saw made her tentacles curl up in horror. You have replaced the navigation computer with a mechanical compass. Yep, said Jake. Electronic systems can be hacked or jammed, but a compass always points north, no matter what. There is no north in space, Admiral Crexton pointed out. There is if you know how to read the stars, Jake replied. Humans have been navigating by the stars for thousands of years. It's like riding a bicycle. You never forget. What's a bicycle? Asked Dr. Tessara. Never mind, said Lisa. The point is, we're going old school. No computers, no fancy electronics. Just good old-fashioned human intuition and really big explosives. Commander Veltar floated into the docking bay, using his personal gravity generator to walk on the walls. I came to check on your progress. How much time do you need? About 3 more hours, Jake said, testing the plasma cutter. We still need to install the manual steering system and test the explosive charges. Manual steering system? Commander Veltar's blue skin turned pale. You mean you're going to steer this thing by hand? Like driving a car, Pete said. Except faster and with more shooting. Much faster, Lisa added. We've stripped out everything that creates drag and reinforced the engines. This thing should be able to hit about 95% of light speed. That's faster than the Devourer ships, said Admiral Crexton. That's the idea, Jake said. We're going to go so fast that their defense systems won't have time to react. Dr. Tessara examined the engine modifications. These engines are not designed for this kind of power output. They could explode. That's why we installed extra cooling systems, Lisa said, pointing to a series of pipes and fans that had been welded to the pod's exterior. And backup engines in case the main ones fail? Backup engines? Admiral Crexton looked at the additional engines the humans had bolted to the pod. Those appear to be rocket engines from fireworks? They were on sale, Pete said. Plus, they're really reliable. I've never seen a firework rocket fail to explode. You want them to explode? Asked Commander Veltar. Only when we want them. T.O., Jake said. It's all about timing. The aliens watched as the humans continued their work. Everything they did seemed to be held together with tape, welding, and hope. But somehow, it was all starting to look like it might actually work. What about life support? Asked Dr. Tessara. You will need oxygen and pressure control. We've got about 30 minutes of air in a small tank, Lisa said. That should be enough for the trip. 30 minutes? Admiral Crexton's antennas twitched. The journey to the Devourer fleet will take at least 2 hours. Not at the speed we're going, Jake said. At 95% of light speed, we'll be there in about 15 minutes. And if something goes wrong? Asked Commander Veltar. Then we'll have 15 minutes to fix it, Pete said. Or we'll die trying. That's not very reassuring, said Dr. Tessara. It's not supposed to be, Jake replied. This is a desperate plan for a desperate situation. The humans worked for another hour, installing the manual controls and testing the systems. The pod now looked like something that had been built in a garage by people who had never seen. Proper spaceship design manual. Okay, said Lisa, wiping grease off her hands. I think we're ready for the steering test. Jake climbed into the pod and strapped himself into the pilot's seat. The controls were simple. A steering wheel from an old car, a throttle that looked like it came from a motorcycle, and a big red button labeled boom. The red button? Asked Dr. Tessara. That's the detonator, Pete explained. When Jake reaches the target, he presses. The button and everything goes boom. What if he's knocked unconscious? Asked Admiral Crexton. Dead man's switch, Lisa said, holding up a small device. If Jake's heart stops, the explosives go off automatically. That's morbid, said Commander. Veltar. That's practical, Jake corrected. This mission only works if the explosives detonate at the right time. The aliens watched as Jake tested the controls. The pod moved smoothly through the docking bay, responding to his commands like a trained animal. How does it feel? Asked Dr. Tisara. Like driving a really fast car that's been strapped to a rocket, Jake said. In other words, perfect. Are you scared? Asked Admiral Crexton. Jake thought about it for a moment. Yeah, a little. But I'm also excited. This is the kind of thing humans dream about when we're kids. Flying through space, fighting the bad. Guys, saving the galaxy. Most species dream about peace and prosperity, said Commander Veltar. That's nice too, Jake said. But sometimes you have to fight for peace. And sometimes the fight is really, really fun. He climbed out of the pod and looked at his handiwork. It wasn't pretty, but it was functional. More importantly, it was crazy enough that it might actually work. One more thing, Jake said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small bottle of beer and handed it to Lisa. Hold this for me. Hold my beer? Lisa grinned. You're really going to do this, aren't you? Yeah, Jake said. I'm really going to do this. He looked at the aliens who had been watching them work. They still looked scared and confused, but there was something else in their eyes now. Something that might have been hope. Don't worry, Jake said. In about 18 hours, this is either going to be the most epic victory in galactic history or the most spectacular failure ever recorded. Which do you think it will be? Asked Dr. Tisara. Jake's grin got bigger. Only one way to find out. Jake Morrison floated in space inside his modified escape pod, 10 million kilometers away from the Devourer fleet. Through the small window, he could see the massive alien ships getting closer to the Kepler system. They looked like giant metal. Monsters swimming through the darkness, their hulls covered in spikes and weapons. The pod's radio crackled with voices from the Allied fleet. Ships from 20 different species were watching from a safe distance, their sensors focused on the lone human and his crazy mission. Human Jake, came Admiral Crexton's voice. The lead mothership is beginning its final approach. If you're going to do this, it has to be now. Jake checked his equipment one more time. Oxygen tank full, explosives armed and ready. Manual controls working perfectly. He looked at the compass mounted on the dashboard. It was pointing toward the brightest star in the area, just like it was supposed to. Hey, Lisa, Jake said into his radio. You still there? Right here, boss, came Lisa's voice from the Endeavor. Everything looking good? Perfect, Jake said. He reached into a small compartment and pulled out a bottle of beer. It was his favorite. Brand from Earth, the last one he had brought with him on this mission. Catch this. He opened the pod's small airlock and tossed the bottle gently toward the human fleet. In the zero gravity of space, it floated peacefully away from his pod, tumbling slowly end over end. Hold my beer, Jake announced on the open channel that connected all the ships in the Allied fleet. This is going to be legendary. He sealed the airlock and put his hand on the engine controls. The modified escape pod hummed with barely contained power. Lisa and Pete had done good work. The engines were running smoothly, and all the systems were green. All ships, this is Jake Morrison, he said. I'm beginning my attack run. If this works, you'll know it worked. If it doesn't work, well, it's been nice knowing you all. Good. Luck, human, said Commander Veltar. Your bravery will be remembered. Don't remember me yet, Jake said with a laugh. I'm not dead yet. He pushed the throttle forward, and the pod shot toward the Devourer fleet like a bullet fired from a gun. The acceleration pressed him back into his seat with tremendous force. His vision blurred, and he could feel his heart pounding in his chest. The first wave of defensive fire started when he was still 5 million kilometers away. Beams of energy that could destroy battleships lanced through space, trying to hit the tiny pod. But Jake was ready for them. He had studied the firing patterns, and he knew how the Devourer ships thought. He yanked the steering wheel hard to the left, and the pod spun sideways just as a massive energy beam passed through the space where he had been. Then he pulled back. On the controls, diving under another blast that would have vaporized him instantly. Impossible, he heard Dr. Tissara whisper over the radio. The reaction time required. No biological creature should be able to move that fast. You've never seen a human play dodgeball, came Pete's voice. This is basically the same thing. Jake grinned as he twisted the pod through the defensive fire. The Devourer ships were powerful, but they were also predictable. They fired in patterns, always aiming where they thought he would be, instead of where he actually was. The second wave of defenses kicked in when he was 2 million kilometers away. Thousands of small fighter ships poured out of the motherships, moving to intercept him. They were fast, but Jake was faster. He pushed the throttle all the way forward, and the pod speed increased to levels that should have been impossible. The fighter ships tried to keep up, but they were designed for normal space combat, not for chasing a crazy human moving at 95% of light speed. Target is maintaining course, he heard one of the alien pilots report. We cannot match his velocity. How is he surviving those G-forces? Asked another voice. Jake could feel the G-forces trying to crush him, but he had trained for this. Years of flying high-performance aircraft had prepared his body for extreme acceleration. Plus, humans were naturally tough. Evolution on a death. World had given them bodies that could handle more stress than most aliens could imagine. The third wave of defenses activated when he was 1 million kilometers away. The motherships themselves began firing their main weapons. These were the guns that could crack planets, and they were all aimed at Jake's tiny pod. This was the part where things got really interesting. Jake watched the energy readings on his sensors and saw the massive weapons charging up. He had maybe 3 seconds before they fired. He counted down in his head. 3, 2, 1. He pulled the steering wheel hard to the right and activated the emergency thrusters. The pod spun like a top, corkscrewing through space just as the planet-killing weapons fired. The energy beams passed so close to him that he could feel the heat through the pod's hull. This is insane, he heard Admiral Crexton say. He's flying through firepower that could destroy entire fleets. Yeah, Jake said, dodging another blast. But I'm not an entire fleet. I'm just one crazy human in a really small target. The pod's engines were running at maximum power now, and Jake could smell burning electronics. But they were holding together. Lisa's modifications were working perfectly. 500,000 kilometers. The motherships were getting bigger, and Jake could see the details of their hulls. They were covered in weapons and sensors, all of them trying to track his tiny pod. 100,000 kilometers. The defensive fire was so intense that space itself seemed to be on fire. Jake flew through it all, his hands steady on the controls. His eyes focused on his target. 50,000 kilometers. He could see the dark matter collectors at the back of the lead mothership. They were huge, each one the size of a city, and they were protected by energy shields that glowed like miniature suns. 10,000 kilometers. The shields were right in front of him now, and Jake could see the power readings on his sensors. The aliens were right. These shields were incredibly strong. But Jake wasn't planning to break through them with firepower. 1,000 kilometers. Jake aimed the pod directly at the center of the shield and pushed the throttle past the red line. The engines screamed in protest, but they gave him the extra speed he needed. The pod hit the shield at 96% of light speed. The shield, designed to stop energy weapons and missiles, had never been tested against a solid object moving. At that velocity, for a split second, it held. Then the laws of physics took over. The pod punched through the shield like a bullet through paper. Alarms started blaring throughout the Devourer mothership as the impossible happened. A tiny human craft had done what entire fleets could not do. It had broken through their defenses. Jake found himself flying through the interior of the mothership, racing down corridors that were bigger than city streets. The ship's internal defenses tried to stop him, but he was moving too fast. Automated guns fired at empty space behind him. He could see the power core ahead of him, a massive structure that pulsed with the energy of collapsed stars. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. This was the heart of the Devourer. Mothership, the source of its incredible power. Jake aimed the pod directly at the core and activated the plasma cutter. The tool sliced through the pod's hull, and Jake felt the vacuum of space trying to suck him out. But he held on, guiding the pod on its final approach. "This is Jake to all ships," he said into his radio. "Package delivered. You might want to back up a bit." "Human Jake," came Admiral Crexton's voice. "How do you plan to escape?" Jake laughed as he prepared to press the big red button. "Admiral, I'm a human from Earth. We don't really do escape plans. We do hold my beer and watch this." The pod crashed into the power core with the force of a small meteor. Jake felt the impact throw him around inside the cockpit, but he managed to keep his hand on the detonator. "See you on the other side," he said to nobody in particular. Then he pressed the button. The explosion that followed was visible from 3 star systems away. The Devourer mothership didn't just explode. It created a chain reaction that traveled through the quantum network, overloading every connected ship. One by one, the most powerful fleet in the galaxy tore itself apart. Jake Morrison had done the Alice. Impossible. He had saved the galaxy with nothing but human determination, jury-rigged equipment, and the willingness to fly straight into certain death with a smile on his face. As the last of the Devourer ships exploded, rescue teams raced through the debris field, searching for any sign of the crazy human who had just become a legend. The search and rescue ships spread out across the debris field like tiny lights in the darkness. Pieces of destroyed Devourer ships floated everywhere, some as big as buildings, others as small as coins. The explosion had been so powerful that it had scattered wreckage across millions of kilometers of space. Commander Valtar piloted his rescue ship through the floating metal, scanning for any sign of life. His blue skin had turned almost white with worry. The other alien commanders were doing the same thing, but none of them really expected to find anything. No one could survive an explosion that big. "This is Rescue Ship 7, came Dr. Tessara's voice over the radio. "I'm detecting some unusual readings in Sector 12. "What kind of readings?" asked Admiral Crexton from his own search ship. "It appears to be a small piece of debris with a very weak power signature. It might be nothing, but—" "I'm heading to your location," said Commander Valtar. He turned his ship toward Sector 12, hope growing in his chest. When he arrived at Dr. Tessara's position, he saw what she had found. Floating peacefully among the wreckage was Jake's escape pod. It was badly damaged, with scorch marks all over the hull and several holes punched through the metal. But it was still in one piece. "Life signs?" asked Admiral Crexton, who had just arrived. Dr. Tessara ran her sensors over the pod. "I'm detecting one human life form inside. Unconscious, but alive." "How is that possible?" Commander Valtar whispered. "I don't know," Dr. Tessara admitted. "By all the laws of physics, he should be dead 10 times over." They carefully towed the pod back to the medical bay of the nearest ship. As soon as they opened the hatch, They found Jake Morrison slumped over in his pilot seat, still strapped, in with a peaceful smile on his face. He was breathing, his heart was beating, and somehow he didn't seem to have any serious injuries. The alien doctors worked on him for several hours, running every test they could think of. Finally, Dr. Tisara emerged from the medical bay with a confused expression on all 8 of her tentacles. "Well?" asked Admiral Crexton. "He has a concussion, some bruised ribs, and what humans call a hangover," she said. "Other than that, he's perfectly fine." "A hangover?" asked Commander Veltar. "Apparently, it's a side effect of drinking too much alcohol," Dr. Tisara explained. "Though I have no idea how he managed to get drunk during a space battle. He probably had a backup beer hidden somewhere in the pod," came a familiar voice. They turned to see Lisa Chun walking down the corridor with Pete Williams behind her. "Is he awake?" asked Lisa. "He woke up about 10 minutes ago," said Dr. Tisara. "The first thing he said was, and I quote, 'Did we get them?'" "And?" asked Pete. "The Devourer fleet has been completely destroyed," said Admiral Crexton. "Every single ship. The explosion created a cascade failure that traveled through their entire quantum network." "That's our boss," said Lisa proudly. "He always was good at making things go boom." They walked into the medical bay where Jake was sitting up on a hospital bed, looking tired but happy. He had a bandage around his head, and his left arm was in a sling, but he was grinning like he had just won the lottery. "Hey guys," he said, when he saw them, "did I miss anything exciting?" "You destroyed the most powerful fleet in galactic history," said Commander Veltar. "Cool," Jake said. "How's my pod?" "Your pod is scrap metal," said Dr. Tisara. "The fact that it held together long enough to protect you is a miracle of engineering." "Lisa builds good stuff," Jake said, nodding toward his chief engineer. "I had some help," Lisa replied. "Pete's explosive charges worked perfectly." "Speaking of which," said Admiral Crexton, "how did you survive the explosion?" "You were at the center of a blast that destroyed a ship the size of a small moon." Jake thought about it for a moment. "I guess I got lucky. The pod's hull held together, just long enough to protect me from the worst of it. Plus, the explosion pushed me away from the mothership before the really big blast hit." "That's not luck," said Dr. Tisara. "That's impossible." "Maybe," Jake said with a shrug. "But impossible things happen all the time. You just have to be in the right place at the right time. And be crazy enough to try something like this in the first place." Added Pete Dot over the next few hours. News of Jake's victory spread throughout the galaxy. The story grew with each telling. Some versions said he had flown through the fire of 1,000 suns. Others claimed he had wrestled the Devourer mothership to death with his bare hands. All of them agreed on one thing. A single human had done what entire fleets could not do. 6 months later, the Galactic Council held a special ceremony to honor Jake Morrison. Representatives from every member species came to see the human who had saved them all. They gave him medals, awards, and honors that had never been given to any non-native species before. But the thing that Jake was most proud of was a new tradition that had started among the military forces of the galaxy. Before any dangerous mission, the commanders would gather their crews and raise a toast with whatever drink their species preferred. The traditional phrase, now spoken in hundreds of languages across the galaxy, had become a symbol of courage and determination. "Hold my beer and watch this." Jake stood at the podium in the council chambers, looking out at thousands of aliens who were all staring at him with something between respect and complete bewilderment. "I know a lot of you still don't understand why I did what I did," he said. "You think humans are crazy for taking risks like that. And you're probably right. We are crazy." The audience was completely silent. "But sometimes," Jake continued, "crazy is exactly what the galaxy needs. Sometimes the best solution isn't the smartest one or the safest one. Sometimes you just have to look at impossible odds and say, "Challenge accepted." He raised a bottle of beer that he had somehow smuggled onto the podium. "So here's to being crazy," he said. "Here's to taking chances. And here's to proving that sometimes the most unlikely person can save the day." He took a drink and smiled. "Now, who wants to see some pictures of Earth? I've got some great shots of humans doing incredibly stupid and dangerous things for fun." The aliens looked at each other nervously. They had just given this human the highest honors in the galaxy, and now he wanted to show them more examples of human craziness. But they found themselves leaning forward, curious despite themselves. Because if there was one thing they had learned from Jake Morrison's impossible victory, it was that human craziness might just be the most powerful force in the universe. And in the back of the chamber, Admiral Crexton turned to Commander Veltar and whispered, "I'm starting to think we should recruit more humans for our military." Commander Veltar nodded. "As long as we keep plenty of beer on hand." From that day forward, the phrase, "Hold my beer," became the unofficial motto of the Galactic Defense Force. And whenever someone suggested a plan that seemed impossible, dangerous, or just plain crazy, the commanders would look at each other and ask the same question: "Do we have any humans available for this mission?" Because sometimes, when the fate of the galaxy hangs in the balance, what you really need is someone willing to fly straight into certain death with a smile on their face and a joke on their lips. Someone like Jake Morrison, the human who taught the galaxy that the best way to solve an impossible problem is to hold someone's beer and show them how it's done.